Morning as we continue our series on Revelation, what the future holds. I'm going to be sharing with you a message on the reality of Satan. The reality of Satan. See, one of the most talked about or mentioned topics in all of the Bible is Satan and his demons. And yet many people, especially Christians, give so much or so less emphasis or little stress on the reality of Satan and his demons, when the fact is, Satan and his demons give us the biggest struggle of all. I can give you numerous references in the Bible that talked about evil and his works and his ways, and yet here we are as Christians, we tend to ignore it or not pay attention to it or give little emphasis to it. Why? Because we like to blame people instead of blaming Satan. Hear me out. We like to blame people when there are personal crises or societal difficulties happening. For instance, during the time of the hurricanes back in September, we all remember that, how the hurricane affected Houston and Florida and Puerto Rico, right? And guess who CNN blamed for that? Donald Trump. How about the shooting in Las Vegas that 58 people were killed, and also the shooting at the church in Sutherland Springs where 26 people died? And whom did the Democrats blame for that? The Republicans did it. And how about this recent flu epidemic that we're having, that so far over 100 people died here in the Dallas-Fort Worth alone? And who are the people blaming for that? CDC. They said it is the Center for Disease Control is the culprit for it. We like to blame people where we are experiencing a personal crisis or public difficulty. For instance, if you have a fight or an argument with your spouse or with your boss, who do you blame? Your spouse or your boss, don't you? And yet the Bible clearly tells us in Ephesians 6:12 this from the Living Bible. For we are not fighting against people made of flesh and blood, but against persons without bodies, the evil rulers of the unseen world, those mighty satanic beings and great evil princes of darkness who rule this world, and against huge numbers of wicked spirits in the spirit world. Our enemy is not against flesh and blood. Our enemy is Satan and his demons, and the reality of it that he is the primary culprit. Hear me out. He is the primary culprit in many, if not all, of our personal issues. He is the primary culprit in many of our personal dilemma. The reason that we're struggling is because we're blaming people instead of facing up against Satan. And yet here's what we like to do. As believers, we don't pay attention to him. As a matter of fact, if I ask you this, many of you would say, I've never done it. How many of you on a daily basis specifically say, protect us from Satan and his demons? Just a handful of people would do that nowadays. And yet the Bible clearly instructs us. And unless we understand who Satan is, and know exactly his schemes, then here's what's going to happen. He would continually harass us, but then our response is to blame other people. And here in Revelation 9, as you stand please, and we're going to read verses 9 through 12, you're going to see here the reality of Satan. Revelation 9, 1 through 12, the reality of Satan and his demons. Beginning in verse 1. The fifth angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and the sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. And out of the smoke, locusts came down upon the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were not given power to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes a man. During those days, men will seek death, will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. The locusts look like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. The hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails and stings like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had a king, or as king over them, the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, Apollyon. The first woe is past, 2 other woes are yet to come. You may be seated. Now let's look at the context of what we read here. Last week we learned about the opening of the 7th seal in Revelation 8. But remember, the opening of the 7th seal is the sounding of the 7 trumpets. In other words, the 7th seal is the 7 trumpets of God showing or continuing His progressive and increasing judgments on earth during the time of tribulation. Now, what is the time of tribulation once again? A time of tribulation is immediately after the time of rapture. Rapture is the time when all the believers will be caught up in the air to be with the Lord Jesus forever and ever. And at that moment when it happens, the Great Tribulation begins, which is a 7-year period of cataclysmic events that have never been seen before, as Jesus said in Matthew 24:21. But also we learned that from the trumpets, some of them were duplicates or replicas of the Egyptian plagues as we see in the book of Exodus. Now last week we learned about the first 4 trumpets in Revelation 8. Let's have a quick review of that so we can understand and remember those first 4 trumpets. Remember, the first trumpet was the hail and fire mixed with blood. Similar to the 7th Egyptian plague, and that destroyed 1/3 of the earth's land. Does anyone remember the second trumpet? The sound of the second trumpet led to the huge meteor that came to earth and the water turned into blood. The same Egyptian plague, the first one that came to the people of Egypt and to Pharaoh, and that destroyed 1/3 of the sea. And remember, the third trumpet was the coming of the huge asteroid. And the name of that asteroid was Wormwood, meaning bitter. And that destroyed 1/3 of the earth's natural waters. And then, of course, the 4th trumpet was similar to the darkness in that Egyptian plague, the 9th Egyptian plague that hit Egypt and Pharaoh during the time, and that destroyed 1/3 of the earth's celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars. But remember, at the end of Revelation 8, there was once again a brief pause because God warned people about the pending 3 other trumpets and how they were associated with the woes of God. Instead of simply calling them the 5th trumpet, the 6th trumpet, and the 7th trumpet, God calls them the first woe, the second woe, and the 3rd woes. But this morning, we're only going to look at the first woe, or the 5th trumpet, because God has given it a considerable amount of explanation Instead, therefore, we're going to look at and learn about the fifth trumpet, and then next week we will continue learning about the six trumpets, because both trumpet blasts are found here in Revelation 9. But once again, here the events in the fifth trumpet were given extensive or considerable amount of explanation, unlike the first four trumpets. Remember how the first four trumpets, there was the upheaval, and then there was the consequence, and then it was over. But here in the fifth trumpet, as you will see, God has explained it differently. But not only that He gave a considerable amount of explanation for the fifth trumpet, God also made for the first time a switch. Hear me out. A shifting. From all the physical chaos and agonies, now God shifted into physical, or rather spiritual, agony. Remember, in all the seals and in the first four trumpets, those were physical agonies, weren't they? Earthquakes, hail, deaths. All those were related to physical. And yet the fifth trumpet, suddenly God focused on the spiritual agony that He would inflict on people through Satan and his demons. And here in the verses that we read, not only that we're going to see those, we're also going to see here the reality of Satan and his demons.
Right.
Now, if someone would ask you the question, who is Satan? He'd probably say a bad person. And yet here in the verses that we read, and many more in the scriptures, we'll see who he really is. The first one is this: Satan is a fallen star. Look at verses 1, 2, and 11. Verses 1, 2, and 11. Look at verse 1. The fifth angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. Now, in the third trumpet, we also saw or read the falling of a star onto the earth. But we know that was a huge asteroid because of the explanation. And yet here, this is different, because this star that had fallen on earth from the sky is not going to be an object. It's not going to be another asteroid. It's not going to be another meteor, but rather this would be a person. This star is going to be a person. Because look at the explanation of this fallen star, beginning in verse 1. The fallen star is described as this: the star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. We'll talk about that abyss later on. But there's no way that a celestial object like a star, or a moon, or sun can actually hold a key and open something, right? And so therefore, this is a person because he was given a key to open the abyss. But here's another point to show you that this fallen star is a person. And look at verse 2. He was addressed as a he. Look at verse 2. When he opened the abyss, it did not say it, but it used a third person singular, he, when he opened the abyss. So therefore, the fallen star is a person. But not only that the fallen star is a he, but also given the key, he was also the king of the abyss, or the angel of the abyss. Look at verse 11. The head is a king over them, the angel of the abyss. This fallen star is a person because he has been given the key to the abyss. He was also a he. And on top of it, he was also the king and angel of the abyss. But so now the question is, who is that he? Who is that fallen star? Well, there is no one other than Satan himself, because he is the fallen star, and we'll talk about that later, because he was also the fallen angel of God, and at the same time, he was made king of the abyss. Now let's talk about the abyss for a minute. Now notice that in your Bible, in Revelation chapter 9, the word abyss, which literally means from the Greek word abyssos, bottomless pit, or a prison house for demons. The word abyss is the prison house for demons. But notice that here the emphasis was given because 4 times in this chapter alone, the word abyss or the bottomless pit is mentioned. Now in the entire book of Revelation, the word abyss is mentioned 8 times. And of course, it's mentioned in other parts of the Bible. Now, the word abyss, abyssos, is a place of torment and isolation, a place of severe torture and isolation, not for people, but strictly reserved for his demons, Satan's demons, and for Satan himself. We see this in Revelation 20, verse 3. Now this place is a dark, smoky, gloomy, disgusting place, because look at what it says in verse 2. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. Imagine your stove or your oven, and let's say you're cooking a turkey there, and you had forgotten about your turkey, and after 10 hours, you went back there and you opened your oven, and guess what would come out of it? A dark, stinky, burning smoke, right?
Yes.
That means you burned your turkey. Now imagine that, but 100 million times in terms of its gravity, and that would be the abyss. But notice that because it was opened up, the sun and the sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. Suddenly, it became so dark. Suddenly, when the abyss was opened up, when the lid from the abyss was opened up, it became so dark because of the smoke. Now here's what's interesting about it. That place is reserved for the demons and the evil ones and Satan, and yet the demons are very aware of that place that they don't even want to be there. Remember the time when Jesus went to the town of Gerasenes, and while he was ministering to people, he encountered demons that possessed a man. Remember that time in Luke 8? And when the demons saw him, they knew who Jesus is, and they said to him, "Please don't send us to the abyss. Just let us die there in the lake and drown together with the pigs." Remember that? Look at what it says in Luke 8:30 and 31. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "Legion," he replied, because many demons had gone into him, and they begged him repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. Because this demon pit or prison house is a disgusting place that no one wants to be there, even the demons themselves. But there's a good news. There is a good news that this demon pit is locked right now. Can you imagine if that prison house for demons is open right now? And if you think the evil things that is happening in our world is bad enough, wait till we see what happens in the Great Tribulation when Satan himself would have the key and open that abyss. They imagine all the demons that would come out of there.
Right.
Second, Satan is not just the fallen star, he is a formidable enemy. In other words, he is a powerful, strong enemy, and so we should never underestimate him. We should never mock him or make fun of him, because he does have supernatural powers to aggravate us. For instance, look at verses 3 to 10.
Right.
Look at one of his supernatural powers. Look at verse 3. And out of the smoke, locusts came down upon the earth, and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. Did you see the power of Satan there? That when he opened the abyss, the smoke came out, but that smoke that came out became scorpion-like locusts. All the smoke that came out from that abyss became scorpion-like locusts. And notice that it says there, in verse 3 once again, that they were locusts, and yet they were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. In other words, those may look like locusts, but yet they would sting like scorpions. They would fly around and bite people, and yet it would sting them like scorpions. But they would be swarming because there will be so many of them. And this is part all of the fifth trumpet of God, which is what he calls one of his three woes. But notice in verse 4, but these locusts would come out with scorpion stings in their tails, but they would only inflict all those who do not have the seal of God in their foreheads. Look at verse 4. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Now here's the question. But who are those people who do have the seals of God on their foreheads? Well, we learned this already in Revelation 7. Those were the 144,000 Jewish people that God saved during the Great Tribulation, and he got them a seal or a brand or a mark and put that mark on their foreheads, assuring them that they are now the people of God. But not only that, those were Christians, Gentile Christians, who trusted Christ during the Great Tribulation period. They too were sealed by God on their foreheads. But notice in verse 5, but those who did not have the seal on their foreheads, look at what happened to them. Verse 5. They were not given power to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes a man. So therefore, this locust would strike like sting from scorpions, and would affect or impact those who do not have the seal of God in their foreheads. Those are the non-believers. For how long? It tells us 5 months. Now you're thinking, what is the significance of 5 months? Well, the significance of that is this. A natural locust lifespan or life cycle is 5 months. Here's FYI for us. The natural lifespan or cycle of a locust is 5 months. Locusts are usually active during the springtime into summertime, between the months of May to September. So that means during that time, for 5 months, the locust would inflict their pain on those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Now this locust, the swarming attack of the locust, is similar to the 8th Egyptian plague, which is also locusts swarming and attacking and biting and stinging the Egyptians. But here's the question though. Here's the question. Are those natural locusts that infested the Egyptians and infesting earth right now, are those the same natural locusts that will be present during the Great Tribulation, or are they something else? Here's what I believe, because the Bible would tell us this. Those natural locusts are not the same locusts as we know them. Those are going to be demons. Why? I'm going to give you 5 reasons on the verses that I'm going to share with you. 5 reasons why those locusts are not just regular natural locusts, but rather they are demons. Because look at verse 3. And out of the smoke, locusts came down upon the earth and were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. They cannot be natural locusts because locusts cannot live in a place that is dark, smoky, hot, and disgusting. They need vegetations, correct? And yet, these came out from the abyss. Therefore, those locusts are actually demons. But look at verse 4. Here's another proof. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant of tree. Now think about that. Locusts, their target when they are attacking, they would target greens, plants, and vegetations. And yet here, they're not attacking the vegetations. They were attacking what? Humans. So therefore, they are demons. Notice also in verse 4, they were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Now that's quite interesting. Why? Those are demons because, remember in the seals and in the first 4 trumpets, that even the believers, those who trusted Christ during the Great Tribulation, hear me out, pay attention to this one. Remember how they were also affected and impacted by the seals? Even though they were Christians already, remember how they were slain? Remember how they were, the souls of them went up to the altar of the Lord and they were crying out to God, when are you going to avenge your blood? In other words, the seals and the trumpets affected them. But here, it's different. Those locusts or demons did not affect those believers and the Jewish believers. Why? Because if you are a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ, listen to me, you are untouchable and unbeatable by Satan. Did you know that?
Right.
Look at what it says in 1 John 5:18. We know that anyone born of God, are you born of God? Are you a born-again Christian?
Yes.
Do you know for a fact that when you die today, you're going to heaven because you are a born-again Christian? If you are just a religious person or a churchgoer, you are not born of God. And therefore, you are making yourself an easy target for Satan.
Right.
We know that anyone born of God does not continue to sin. The one who was born of God keeps him safe, and the evil one cannot harm him. That's why those Christians during the time of Great Tribulation, when the locusts came or the demons, they were protected because demons cannot absolutely harm believers. But look at verse 6. During those days, men will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. That shows us that those locusts are actually demons. Because demons, hear me out, love to intensify our spiritual agony. Demons love to heighten our spiritual dilemma. They don't care much about your physical disorder. They don't care much about your physical dilemma, but they love to intensify your spiritual agony. Notice these people were seeking to die. They're seeking death, and yet death flees. Why? Because those people were actually not affected by any physical disorder or illness, but they are going through spiritual agony, like fear, addiction, worry, failure, and many other spiritual agonies that people do encounter. But Satan is so good in heightening, aggravating, and intensifying the spiritual agony in a person's life that, for instance, if a person is filled with fear, this person is always afraid of something, you know what Satan would do? He would aggravate that spiritual condition. He would afflict a lack of sleep. He would add nightmares to that person. He would show this person demonic visions and hallucinations.
Right.
Not only that, for instance, a person is overcome by guilt. This person just could not forgive himself or herself, full of shame. You know what the devil would do? Would aggravate that situation. Because of that, would make that person depressed. Would make this person have a eating disorder. Would make this person worry about life. And all those different things, and become paranoid because they would think that people are actually talking about them. See, Satan is so good in aggravating the condition of people when it comes to their spirituality or versus their physical agony. Let me ask you this. What's your spiritual agony? Worrying? Fear? Your past failures that you cannot overcome? Is it guilt? Is it shame? Is it low self-esteem? What's your spiritual agony? If you're going through that, I guarantee you, Satan is going to aggravate that situation in your life. That's why it's important that you learn how to face Satan and his demons and don't ignore them. But notice also that these locusts are demons because look at their mutated or altered appearance. Look at verses 7 to 10. Have you ever seen a locust like this? They look like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair. Their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like that of thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails stinging like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. Those scorpion-like locusts are gruesome creatures, aren't they?
Yes.
Have you ever seen a grasshopper, aka locust, looking like that? No. Have you ever seen a scorpion with a crown on their heads, or with the long hair with their teeth looking like lions? Never.
No.
That mutated, gruesome creature is no other than the demons, and therefore the enemy or Satan is a formidable foe or powerful enemy. Why? Because he can transform something as locust into something gruesome like that. And so therefore, those are not just natural locusts, those are demons that would attack people who don't know the Lord during the time. But Satan also is a forbidding destroyer. A forbidding destroyer. Look at verse 11. This fallen star, this fallen angel, the king of the abyss, the angel of the abyss, the ringleader, if you may, of the demons, has a name. Look at his name. Whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, Apollyon. Those are two different languages, yet those words mean the same thing, destroyer. Satan is the unfriendly, hostile, forbidding destroyer. Why? Remember what Jesus said as to who the destroyer is in John 10:10? I don't have the reference here, but you can write it down in your paper. But in John 10:10, the Bible says, "And the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy." Jesus said that because the thief is another name for Satan, such as he is also the liar, the murderer, the deceiver, the prince of the power of this air. He is also the ruler of the darkness. He has so many titles. He is also the devil, evil, and Lucifer. And yet here, he is the thief, but the thief's job is to destroy. And so therefore, this king of the abyss, this angel of the abyss, is no other than Satan himself. He is the fallen angel, the fallen star. And ever since he fell from the sky to earth, he was bound to do one thing and one thing only. Hear me out. If there's only one thing you can take home from this message, this would be it. He is bound to do one thing to God's created people. Destroy you and me. Destroy you and me, because that is his name. He was once a fallen star. And we know what stars are, right? For instance, if we know of a unique athlete or an excellent actor, we call them stars, don't we? For instance, LeBron James is an excellent basketball player, so he is a basketball star, right? Some of you probably are liking the music of Bruno Mars. And because he is an excellent singer, we call him a star, right? So we know those, and do you know that Satan was once a heavenly star? As a matter of fact, in Ezekiel 28, he was described as a perfect angel. He was described as full of wisdom. He was described as a one who was with God all the time. He was described as the minister of music of the heavenly host. He was described as a person anointed by God. And yet at one point, he decided to rebel against God. And because of that, God casted him out of heaven. Look at what it says in Ezekiel 28:15 through 17. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, until wickedness was found in you. Though you were widespread trade, you were filled with violence and sin. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, so I throw you to the earth. Look at what it says in Isaiah 14:12, the same thing. how you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground. And look at how the Lord Jesus described the falling of Satan from the heavens. Luke 10:18. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. But ever since he fell as a fallen star, as a fallen angel from heaven, he was bound and determined to do one thing. Every single created person of God, he would destroy. And you're not exempt from it. You are not exempt from it. Certainly, he's not going to come to you and scare you. He's not going to come to you hiding in the bushes and suddenly when you're there, ah! He's not that dumb. Just like when we went to Walmart on Friday night and we were buying something, when suddenly this girl was selling some stuff outside Walmart, but she was hiding behind one of the vending machines. And as I was walking, she did like this, ah! But Satan is not going to do that. Satan, more often than not, will come to you as an angel of light. Look at what he says in 2 Corinthians 11:14. No wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. That means, if you struggle with pornography or lust of the flesh, well, he's going to come to you, one of his demons would appear to you in a woman wearing nothing but bikinis. Or a man wearing nothing but a grass skirt, like in the Winter Olympics. Or he would come up to you looking like a lotto ticket. He would come up to you like a buffet food. He would come up to you in a form of cigarettes. He would come up to you like whiskey or wine. You may laugh, but that's how he does it.
That's right.
He comes to you as an angel of light. He would come to you like in the form of dollars, that you will become greedy. He will come to you in the form of sleet and freezing rain, that you will be so scared to come to church. He would come up to you as an angel of light. Because he has one form and one desire about you, to see you fall and be destroyed. You know, a lot of times, for students, they will come to you as a mean teacher. They will come to you as a bad grade. But unless we realize that all those many, if not all of our personal issues are brought upon by Satan and his demons, then we're going to blame our teachers, we're going to blame our government, we're going to blame our spouses, we're going to blame our pastors, we're going to blame people around us instead of fighting and facing up against Satan because he is the culprit. Hear me now, church. Wake up. It is time for us to wake up. There is the reality of Satan and his demons. Look at verse 12. The first woe is past. Two other woes are yet to come. Imagine that. Imagine that. Is there anything else that would top or at least equal the first woe or the fifth trumpet? Evidently, the answer is yes. Because two more woes are yet to come. And yet the fifth trumpet, for us believers today, outside of the Great Tribulation period, this trumpet is telling us one thing. Satan is real. His demons are real. But unless we accept that, then he's going to attack us, harass us, and give us a hard time all the time because he has a daily goal for you. I'm going to destroy you. So therefore, how do we handle him or them? How do we face Satan? How do we confront him? May I suggest two things based on what we read. The first one is this. Two ways to face Satan. Fear him not. We should not be afraid of him.
Right.
But it doesn't mean we take him for granted. I'm not afraid of you. Who cares about you? You know what? Every time we do that, you know what he does? He mocks you. He laughs. Because he has already gotten you. Because you don't show any respect to him. There's a difference between respect and not fearing. Fear him not. But why? Why should we not fear him? Because his power is limited, and his power is dependent on what God permits him to use. Look at verses 4 and 5. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant, but only those people who did not have the seal of God in their foreheads. Look at verse 5. They were not given power to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. Notice that their power is limited and directly under the sovereign control of God. So when God tells you, I don't want you to use your power on Damon, don't. Then they won't. But we will have that strength to fear him not when we stay strong in him. When we stand firm, as Ephesians 6:10 tells us, stand strong, stay firm in the Lord. But once you become a wishy-washy Christian on Sunday, non-Christian on Monday, he can still inflict pain in you. But you should not fear him. But the second one is, fear him not. The second is, fight him a lot. Fear him not. Second is, fight him a lot. Why? Because remember in verse 11, his name is Abaddon. His name is Apollyon, which means the destroyer. His goal is to destroy you. His goal is to ruin your life every single day. So what do? Just allow him? No. Fight him. Fight him how? Pray. Every single day. Don't forget to mention when you pray, before you go to work, before you go to school, before you get out of the house, say, God, I pray that you eliminate Satan and his demons away from my home, away from the school. Pray, God, that you protect me from the evil ones. Pray that way. Don't just say, God, keep me safe as I go to work. God, protect me as I go to school. Specifically mentioned because God tells us that in James 4:7, 1 Peter 5:9, Psalm 91, and Jude 1:24. Fight him a lot also by learning to resist him. How many of you have been tempted to commit a sin this past week? We all have. How many of you have been tempted to go above the speed limit? Cut someone off? Curse someone out, be mad at someone, be prejudiced, and be racist. We all face that temptation every single day. But God has given us the power to say no. Resist him. And the Bible says in James 4:7, resist him and he will flee from you. And remember one thing. Every time you fight him, you are fighting him from victory, not for victory. Hear me out. You are fighting him from victory, not for victory, because you are already victorious. Right. You are already a winner because Christ defeated him already. There's only one person who is loser and beaten already, and that is Satan. But always remember, you can always win your battle against Satan because you are victorious. Because 1 John 4:4 tells us this, you are from God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he who is in you than the one who is in the world. You can win because you're fighting him from victory, not for victory. Let us pray.